Coming up on episode 120 of the Creative Writing Podcast, I'm talking about whether you should throw yourself a book launch party.
I can't go back to sleep, it's almost light. These restless thoughts have kept me up again tonight.
Hey there, creatives. Welcome to another episode of the Creative Writing Podcast. I'm your host, Kirsten Oliphant, and you are in the right place if you are a writer, blogger, or creative who wants to build an online platform without being smarmy. And I'm really glad to have you on today. I'm going to be sharing some details about my recent book launch party and kind of answering the question for you, or maybe helping you answer the question of whether you should throw yourself a book launch party as well. If you're new here, I am so glad to have you. This podcast deals with writing and blogging and all of these social media platformy type of things. And if you're not sure what platform means, essentially that's your audience, that's your readers, it's your super fans. So I want to help you on the show connect with your super fans, get readers and turn them into raving fans. So that's what the show is all about in different ways. It's not just about how to write or how to vlog or all those things, but doing things that will connect you with your right people. So should you throw yourself a book launch? We're going to talk about that in just a sec. If you stick around to the end of the show, I'm going to have all of the announcements and links and featured community members and all those things. But I want to, for right now, give you the link to the show notes in case you want to go and find links, see images. I've got some good GIFs or GIFs, if you pronounce them that way. No judgment here, since I think the creator called them GIFs. I still call them GIFs. Take that. But if you want to see those, you can head over to createifwriting.com/120. And if you don't want to ever miss creative writing news, you can subscribe for the weekly quick fix, which comes out on Fridays. And I've got some really fun Black Friday, Cyber Monday, whatever giant shopping weekend sales for you guys. So you definitely want to be subscribed so you can hear about those. They're going to come out early this week. So don't miss out. And that's at createifwriting.com/quick fix.
Here it comes again. There's a chill in the air, and everywhere you can feel the sun.
So let's talk about it. Should you throw yourself a book launch party? I'm going to not really give you a firm answer, but I'm going to talk about why I threw mine, some pros and cons, and then some tips if you decide this is something you want to do. So for my most recent book, which is Creative Collaborations, I decided that I was going to have an in-person actual launch party on the day that it came out. And I'm not sure at first where this idea came from. To be honest, I think I was like lurking around Airbnb looking for places to hold a retreat, because I'm considering doing a retreat, an in-person retreat next year here in Houston. And I found this really amazing space and was trying to think of how it would work for some kind of event. I just was like, I want to have an event there. And I had this book launch coming up. It was also the week of my birthday and I was turning 40. So I felt like this was the time. And it wasn't just because I felt like throwing one, but I will say the thought first came to me not because I was being intentional and planning, but because I was like, you know what? I want to do this. I've never had a book launch party. I don't usually throw myself parties, especially not birthday parties. So it was just kind of an idea that came and seemed fun to me. So just confession, that's where this whole thing started. But the more I started planning, the more that this just made sense. And I put in details that made it make even more sense. So I'll get into that. I want to share a quote from Ryan Holiday, and this is a paraphrased quote. I heard him talking about this on the Creative Pen podcast recently. Ryan Holiday is the author of Trust Me, I'm Lying, and a more recent book, Perennial Seller. I thought it was Perennial Bestseller. I think it's Perennial Seller. And he was talking on her show about marketing, and she asked a question. I'm not sure exactly what her specific question was, but it was about whether somebody should do a particular thing, try a tactic or do a strategy. And he said, the marketing should fit the message, essentially. And I felt like the more I started putting the details into place, it made more sense, even though I was really drawn to this idea on the surface because I thought it sounded fun. In reality, I think that there were a lot of smart things that were more subconscious because the book was all about collaborations. So having an in-person event, which actually included, I'm trying to think how many people, at least half a dozen people who were in the book who contributed to the book. Because in creative collaborations, I talk about ways to actually collaborate, how to get people to say yes to your pitches, kind of a etiquette guide to digital networking. And then I also, in the second half of the book, talked about specific kinds of partnerships and gave examples. And I had over 15 different kind of expert bloggers, social media influencers, people kind of in the online space who shared details about each of those specific collaborations. So that was really cool. And so I had a bunch of them actually in attendance here because Houston has a great social media community and I've collaborated with a bunch of those people. So it was great to have them. I was able to invite them and have them actually show up in the space. So it just started to make more and more sense to me. This idea that at first just sounded like a fun idea, I started seeing all the benefits to it because it made sense for my message. So I really wanted the more I thought about it and kind of debated, because I had to put down a big chunk of change to rent the place on Airbnb that I wanted to find. And I wanted to know that I could do this. And so I kind of planned it out beforehand and thought about my goals. So my goals, and these are kind of the goals to think about if you're going to throw a book launch party. Clearly you can sell copies of your book. And if you have physical books, which mine did not come in time, and that was something I thought might happen. The book was actually supposed to be done way before, but here in Houston, we had Hurricane Harvey and a number of other things that just contributed to the book. Just not getting out in print in time. So I did not have the print copies, but you could. And my plan was to have those print copies, but also my other books in print. And none of them got done in time. Unfortunately, the shipping was slow and I changed some of the interior matter for one of the books on CreateSpace. And so that pushed everything back. But I did still sell copies. I made a little flyer that had the cover of the book, had all the sponsor names and their information. And then also I made a really easy link, a pretty link to buy the book. So if you're interested, because I keep talking about the book, it's creativewriting.com/CC for creative collaborations. I made a flyer with that on there. And so, I asked people not to bring presents, but I told them, hey, if you want to support me, you can go ahead and buy the book. It's 99 cents today. And I did go look at my book report, which is kind of I guess it's a Chrome extension I have in, so you can look at a prettier version of your Amazon sales. And I did get a big bump in sales from that party, I assume, on that day. But you can sell copies. That's a goal. So that was a goal that I had, but it wasn't the primary goal because I thought if I have 40 to 50 people and they all buy the book, that's great, but that's not a ton. That can help in the moment for you to hit some bestseller lists, which I did the first couple of days I stayed on in the categories I was in as a bestseller in the top spots. The other, neat thing about doing something like this is that it does create authority. And in the online space, that is something that's important, is this idea of creating authority for yourself. And what that really means is that people start to value you as an expert. And when you do publish a book, that's something that happens, is you're creating authority. If you're having a kind of event like this, that's, I ended up, I'll get to this later, but I had some big brands sponsor the party. And so that was kind of a, authority building thing. Also paid for things in the party. So there were a bunch of I feel like everything had a sub reason to it, which made this all the more strong in terms of why I did it. But, it brought all the social media people together here in Houston and some of my friends and family who don't understand what I do and probably aren't interested in the book. But it was neat for them to get into the space to see those people and interact and kind of see a better picture of what it is that I do. So it definitely had the authority building aspect. And if you are able to contact PR companies and actually the press and do those things, which was on my goal list but didn't get done, having an actual book launch party can be great for that authority as well. You can have, if the event is public, so if you want to use something like Eventbrite or really publicize it in meetups or something like that, you can actually have it be a discovery tool where people can meet you for the same token. And for me, I made it public on Facebook just so I could share it in groups, but I didn't really make it like a big meetup or anything like that because I mostly did want it to be people who knew me either from the blogging world or through real life. And it was also for me, another goal was to be or to say thank you, I guess, to the contributors that were there and really celebrate their role in the book. Because there were people who didn't contribute that also were just as supportive of the book coming out. And so I wanted to kind of have a big hurrah and thank you for those people. So those were some of my goals. And I feel like it really accomplished those. Again, I did make sales, but I did not expect to make thousands because that wouldn't make sense with having like a 40 to 50 person party. But I did get a big bump in sales. I do feel like it created influence and authority. Again, I didn't do the PR. I didn't have the copies of the book to sign and didn't make it a discovery thing. But it was a great thank you to the contributors and really just a great time. I really, as much as I'm an introvert, I do like these meet and greet things. I have to recover a lot from them, but it was great to get to see people. And I had invited my entire community, my whole email list and everybody. And there was, I think, one person who came out, and I'm so glad that she did. So Vanessa Harris from Vine Life Faith is a person who is a blogger. She's local. She follows me, and she came out, and that was when we met for the very first time, which was fantastic. So Vanessa, shout out to you for coming out. And she got to network with the different blogger groups that are local to Houston and social media people that she had not ever connected with. So that was really fantastic. So if you're trying to decide if you should do this, I think you really need to think about whether this is going to meet your goals or not, because there were expenses, it took time, it took a lot of my energy, frankly, for the book launch week, which I think could have honestly been spent somewhere else. I do not for 1 second regret it. I wouldn't change anything, but it's just something to consider that if you have a lot to do during the book launch week and want to do a lot of promo, planning a party for yourself is going to take up a big chunk of that time. And do you have local people who would come? I knew that I did. I knew that I had 3 separate groups really that came. I had friends and family. I had friends from roller derby, and I had people from the social media and blogging community. And there was only a tiny bit of overlap. Feisty, one of my old teammates from girfeisty.com, she's also a blogger. So she knows the bloggers and she knows the roller derby people because we're on the same team. And the intro of my book is actually about roller derby and how I learned about collaboration there. So it was neat for those people who came out. Really, it's not for most of them the kind of book that they want to buy. I don't think most of them are not doing digital marketing type of stuff, but they came out and got to hear about, the experience that we had on the track and how that informed my theories on collaboration. So, do you have local people who would come if you're thinking about doing this? Is there an ROI, return on an investment? Because again, it's a big investment of time, a big investment of money. So for me, it was really cool to have one. And it might be really cool for you too, but what is the return? And if there's not going to be a return and you just want to do it, awesome. Do it. If you can afford it, just go ahead and do it. Then that's fine. But just realize the reality of it not being a huge thing that gives ROI, because I don't think a book launch party generally will, unless you have like hundreds of people, you make it a really public event, you're already a celebrity or you have celebrities come and you have physical copies of your book that you're selling and signing. I'm just not sure that it's going to bring in a ton of cash unless you do some really creative things. So just letting you know, that's kind of the thing. And also, in terms of Amazon sales, you really want people to buy your book who buy other books in that category. So having those people from my real life come and maybe buy the book just to support me might mess with those also bots. So like when, my book might not show up in the right categories for like people who bought this romance novel also bought creative collaborations. Well, that's not a romance book. So, those kinds of things, just that's a side note to consider that. And then can you afford it? Because again, it was fairly expensive. So my price point for this party was just over $1,000 for around 50 people. And yes, you could absolutely do it for cheaper. I intentionally chose the things I wanted to choose because I just really had an idea in mind. I knew I wanted this particular space and what I wanted to do. And I was on a budget for some of the things, and I had sponsors. So that made it free for me in terms of the cost because I had sponsors completely cover every single thing for the party. More on that in a sec as we get to the how-tos. But if you're trying to decide if you should have a book launch party in a physical location, you need to know if people will show up. You need to consider the ROI and if it's worth it. And just literally, can you afford to do it because there is a big cost involved. And, something to consider too, could I have spent that $1,000 on advertisements on Facebook? Yeah, except I wouldn't have gotten sponsors for that, right? So, I did get the $1,000 in sponsorships to be able to do this, and I would not have gotten them. Like I couldn't have repurposed that money somewhere else. So how to throw yourself a book launch party? If you are undeterred by my non-rosy and very realistic picture of what it looks like to throw a book launch party for yourself, then here are some how-tos, because I think it can be a really successful event. It can be a ton of fun. You can get out there and meet your fans. You can thank the people who contributed or your supporters, or just, there's a lot of different things that, I really believe in in-person connections. I really do believe in them. As much as I'm an introvert and like to hide in my house, I think they're a good thing, at least in sparing measure, because again, introvert right here. So here are some how-tos in case you're thinking about it. You want to start first with setting your goals. And I talked about my goals, but you need to consider your goals, and they may be book sales, it may be having signed copies, it may be authority building. You may want to get PR involved and have, people come in. You may just want to meet and greet your fans because you have a lot in a particular area. And you don't even have to throw it in your area. Maybe you have a ton of fans and you know where they are. You could go to them, but chances are your own town may have the most, but not always. So it just depends. But it can be really great for a lot of things. You just need to set those goals before you do any more planning, because I think that will help inform the kind of space you have, the kind of food you have, like just all the details are going to fall into place. I always feel like for your blog, if any of you guys have taken the foundation series, you know this, that if you do plan out your why really clearly, it's going to help make all the other decisions clear along the way. Whereas if you have a really muddy why, like you're like, I just kind of feel like it. If that had been my only why for this party, I would have had a much tougher time doing all the other things. You need to know your why. So set those goals so you know why you're doing it. And then you need to consider the location and the budget and the date, because we're going to talk next about sponsors. But before you have sponsors, you could theoretically go to them before you have the date, but especially if you want some of them to actually show up and come, you may want to have all those things in place so you can be as specific as possible with asking sponsors. So for me, again, my location, I found it on Airbnb. It was a really neat loft in downtown Houston. Really cool space. That was something that people said again and again was, this place is so cool. It was a really neat space. And I, when I saw it, I kept thinking, what can I have here? I want to have an event here. And so that really inspired the kind of party that I wanted to have and the kind of vibe that I had. And so you want to think about that. I could have just had a free room in a restaurant, and had a book lunch party in a restaurant. And there's all kinds of options and they all look really different. For me, I really wanted my own space. I wanted the kind of vibe that this place had. So you need to think about, again, your goals and what that is. So part of it was, for me, the biggest goals were like influence and fun. And I think having it in a neat space was part of that, for fun and for influence. It just was a really cool event. Even though I threw it myself, I think people were like, this is really amazing. So it was a neat thing. The budget. So you want to kind of think about, okay, I knew my starting point was, I think the place to rent was $450, but then with fees and all the other things, ended up being like $650 or something crazy. So it was a lot more than I was thinking at first. And then I knew after that, I wanted to have alcohol of some kind. So that really bumps up the budget. I wanted to have a photo booth. And so I priced those out. And I knew what date I wanted because I knew what dates this place had open. We also had a lot going on in November and there's holidays. And so I wanted it very early, but also close to my birthday. So I didn't really have a lot of choices. So I went ahead and made all of those decisions, set the location, made kind of a general budget for food, photo booth and other kind of party essentials, and then set the date. And then I approached sponsors. And this may not be something that works for you, but I want you to realize that often if you have any sort of influence, any sort of following, any sort of tribe, any audience, really, you can approach sponsors and talk to them about whatever you're doing. It's not just, a lot of people in my community know of sponsored blog posts. Like that's something that's really familiar. A lot of writers I don't know think about sponsorship in that way. And so, and I know sometimes entrepreneurs do for different items. And so in different communities, people see this differently. But sponsors are a really neat way to do all kinds of things. And I actually have a really cool project in mind for next year where I'm hoping to get a sponsor to pay me to write a book. So more on that later. But just think outside the box. So sponsors, here's what you want to do if you're going to try to get them. And I do talk actually specifically about this in the book. And I got the sponsors on board in time that I could include them in the book, which is a pretty cool perk. So I created a package. I told them exactly what they were going to get. So I talked about the party. I said, if you want to come, you're welcome to come. And here's what that would look like. If you don't want to come and you just want to sponsor digitally, here's what you're going to get. And I outlined, there's going to be 1 to 2 blog posts where I mention you. I'm going to mention you on the podcast 1 or 2 times. I'm going to send an email to my list. Here's how many people are on my email list. I'm going to tweet about you. Here's how many Twitter followers I have. I'm going to Facebook. Here's how many Facebook followers I have. All the nitty-gritty details that you should do when putting together a sponsorship package. And kind of gave them some creative details as well. So that was what I did. I created the package. And then I started with people that I know. I started with brands that I work with, like brands that I use for things. And most of the ones I use actually said yes. So I reached out to ConvertKit, who is my email service provider. And because I'm an affiliate for them, I actually have a great relationship. I have emails that I can reach people on that sponsorship team or on the affiliate side of things that I know I can get that email answered. So I'm not just emailing like info@ConvertKit. I'm emailing this person's name at ConvertKit, and we have like a whole email thread going about other things. So I had a personal connection there, and I use them. So they know me. I support them by being an affiliate, and I pay them. And so, that's how that works. I also spoke with Mediavine, and I spoke at their conference last year. So I have personal connections with the people at Mediavine, and there are also several of them, like Amber from Mediavine, located in San Antonio, which is just a few hours away. So they were trying to get there to the location, but it just didn't work out. So they did kind of what I call the digital package. So I started with the brands that I know and that I have worked with. I wanted to have a local alcohol provider. So there's a couple that I had in mind from Texas, but I didn't realize that a woman that I know from long ago from church, but also from the social media community, her son has actually started the Grateful Dane distillery for rum here in Houston. It was the first artisan rum brewed locally, which is fantastic. So I was beyond excited to partner with Grateful Dane. And so Shelly and her son Ian, who is the founder and everything else of Grateful Dane, actually came out to the party. They brought rum, they talked with people, they brought flyers. It was and they gave away glasses that had Grateful Dane on them. It was really fantastic. And I hope that they had as good of a time as I did. And I know for a lot of people, it was really good for brand awareness because a lot of the people that came often go to like the tastings and tours at the different local breweries here in Houston, because there's a bunch for beer and things like that. So this was a great way for them to get their name out there and great to work with people I knew personally. And Ian, I think the last time I knew him was in junior high when I worked for a church, and he was in the junior high. And so now he's making rum and came to my book launch party. So it was really fantastic. And then Kroger is a national brand, but I have worked with them and gone to events for them locally on a number of occasions. And so I did also have a personal contact there. If you're going to reach out to sponsors, again, start with the people that you know first or have worked with first or have a personal contact. Reach out to more people than you need. I got that advice from Bobby Bird, and there were some times this was really touch and go, and I was like, oh my gosh, I just paid $1,000 for a book launch party. I may not even make that back with my book for a while. Like that's what it was I thinking. This is really crazy. And you know, I just kept emailing and just kept following up because that's something important, and I talk about that in the book as well. So that's something important. Keep a spreadsheet so that if people say yes or no, or you need to follow up, you can actually put the dates in there so you don't email the same person a million times or forget to follow up. So make a spreadsheet for all the people you ask, when you emailed them, if they responded, when you followed up, and the final, answer or final details. Then, one thing you might want to consider moving past sponsorship for this kind of party is hiring some kind of help or a coordinator, asking a friend. I did all this myself, and I went in very aware. Like I'm a worst case scenario person. I'm not like a pessimist necessarily. I have to think about the worst case for every situation, so that I can plan for it. And so I knew this was going to be really hard for me, and it was. It made me not enjoy the party as much, but I didn't want to hire anyone either. So what this meant is that I had to get there early. I had to set everything up. I had to buy all the supplies. I had to buy cups and napkins. Kroger sponsored, they gave me a gift card for the food. So I had to order the food. I had to go pick the food up. I had to arrange the food on tables. We had to get it out of the car and bring it into the building, all that stuff. And then we had to stay later because we actually had to clean up the space because it was a rented space. And that was part of the Airbnb, requirement for this particular space. I had to clean it. And thankfully, some of Rob's really good friends stayed, which was great. Thank you guys. Thank you for Nathan and for Quincy and Charlie and Jeremy. I think that was it. And Elisa. All of you guys stayed and helped. Elisa, especially because you cleaned the cotton candy machine. Yes, there was a cotton candy machine, which was amazing until I was like, oh no, we have to clean this thing. So it was, again, all these details, you have to do them. And I've planned whole events and conferences before, so I know what goes into them. I knew what it would be like. I still took it on. It was still worth it. But you may want to hire somebody because it's just a lot. And then another thing to consider is you want to make it valuable for your online community. So I did a live video. I did a reading actually from the book and put that on live video. I had Madeline Sklar, who is a good friend and also the, #1 Houston social media power influencer, introduce me, which again, authority building, but she's also a great friend. And it was really kind. She just had really kind words to say about me. And I was just so thankful because I'm just so impressed by her. So it was great to have her even come, but then to give that introduction was really great as well. So that video I posted to my page and then shared to my Facebook group. So I did have people watching live. I did have people watching later and getting to hear the reading. So that was a way to include my online community who could not actually be there. So to kind of sum up, I've given you guys some whys, I've given you guys some real talk, and I've given you some tips. Should you throw a book launch party? Probably not. Again, depending on your goals. I don't know. I love innovative and creative marketing ideas. And I actually just heard about a book called Jolt that I'm going to be buying that's all about these. But often they don't have the ROI. Like you're trying things and seeing if it works when really, if you're going to have money that you invest, you should probably invest it somewhere proven. Like talk to other authors about what actually works. And, it just as an example, I know David Chesson from Kindlepreneur has a post all about, he tested the different book review and cheap book things where they send out an email, like you can apply. And if your book is 99 cents or free for that week, they might promote you, or you can pay and have it go out in the email. And he reviewed those to actually show what the ROI is. And so something like that, like versus just being like, oh, this one sounds good, I'll pay for it. If you can go with what's proven to work by other people, and no, not everything always works for everybody the same way, but it is so helpful to belong to author communities. Like one of the ones I'm in, 20 books to 50K, which is a fantastic group. It is such a resource. I just go in there and read what people are asking and saying, because there's a lot of authors in there making a considerable sum of money every year. And so when I hear from them about what's working marketing wise, it's great to hear. You always want to ask, how would this work for me? But you can see that people have tried it and found success, or found, here's tips. It doesn't work well unless you do this. A book launch party, I feel like in some ways it's not the thing that's going to bring you the most ROI. But again, that wasn't my goal. Like it's not going to bring you the most book sales, probably. It's not going to bring you a lot of things, but depending on your goals and depending, like my whole book on collaborations, this made total sense to me and it was perfect. It really was all that I wanted, but it may not be the right thing for you. It probably isn't. You could consider doing a virtual book launch party and going and visiting different blogs or podcasts or other things, which is a more traditional way and may make more book sales and connect you with more people. But you want to find what's proven to work and do that. And if you're able to afford, if you could afford in terms of your time and money to try some innovative, creative things that fit with the message of your book, then by all means do it. But just realize that it's a little bit riskier than trying some of the things that are more tried and true and traditional. So there are my tips for you on how to, or should you, throw yourself a book launch party. And you can find links and pictures and more over at creativewriting.com/120.
And all through the night, that bright harvest moon is shining.
So as we move into what I call the 5-minute frenzy, where I share news and tips and links and info, I wanted to give a big shout out to this week's featured community member, which is Roland Denzel. And I think I've featured Roland before this was a podcast feature, actually in the Quick Fix, because I send out the email with the feature and then also talk about them on the podcast. And I'm featuring Roland because I'm an affiliate for his program that's just starting right now. And I totally believe in it because he's fantastic. And it's called Chill Holidays. And it's all about kind of self-care through the holidays, exercise, eating right, feeling positive, because we're about to enter like that tough time. And so I want to thank Roland, first of all, for being a featured community member, which means he supports the show through Patreon. And you can find out more about that by going to creativewriting.com/Patreon, because there are some cool perks for you, like getting to hear your name out on the podcast, and a private Facebook community once you pledge to a certain level. So this Chill Holidays program is really helpful. It's not writing specific or vlogging specific, it's life specific. So for those of you guys, I think writers and bloggers, I don't know about you, I take terrible care of myself sometimes. And so I just, you may need this, I may need this big time. And so if you want to, it's already started. It just started this week. This is the week starting with November 20th. But you can dive on into the community and everything else. If you go to creativewriting.com/chill, you're going to find my affiliate link there for the program, which means I get a commission at no extra cost to you if you want to join in. So thank you, Roland, for your support. I really am so glad that you're here. If you got the Quick Fix this past week, you saw a picture of me and Roland that was super unflattering of me because we took it from below. But it was really fun. It was great to meet him this summer at Podcast Movement out in California. So again, creativewriting.com/chill. Thank you to all of my patrons. After talking with them and just feeling like I was always reading this long list of their names, I'm going to just read the featured member and any new members. So if you join and support the show, then you're going to hear your name read on the podcast. Go to creativewriting.com/Patreon to hear about that. A big thank you also to Jasmine Commerce of JasmineCommerceMusic.com, who supports the show by song. You can support her by going to JasmineCommerceMusic.com, where you can pick up this song and more from her album. She's an indie artist living in California and is really amazing. We went to college together. I love, love, love her voice and the vibe of all her music. So I would love it if you guys would go check her out and give her a thank you for her support of the show. And by buying her album, that would be fantastic. Again, if you guys want to sign up for weekly emails, you can go to creativewriting.com/quick fix, because I've got 2 big specials. I may do a mini podcast episode sharing my kind of Black Friday specials with you. I don't want to announce them yet because I've been keeping them close to the vest, but they're coming. So definitely sign up. If you're listening to this like in January, months later, I'm sorry, those deals are over, but you should still subscribe to the Quick Fix because you don't want to miss anything, you guys. I put a lot of time and effort into this email, and my hope is that it's something you look forward to getting every Friday. It should be morning, but it might be afternoon. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope this was helpful and informative. I would love to hear more from you, so you can actually reach out to me on Twitter or on social media at Kiki Mojo, or you can join us in the Creative Writing community on Facebook, which is free. And you can go to creativewriting.com/community to get into the Facebook community, which is free and has a bunch of other really fantastic people. We all talk about things, non-smarmy things. On the weekends, we share our links with each other and support each other. And that was this week. There were some great links and great conversations and people just going and reading each other's things and watching each other's YouTube videos. And it's so fun to see. So you don't want to miss out on that community. Okay, wrapping it up. I hope that you guys got a lot out of this. Know whether or not you should plan a book launch party for yourself. And I hope you have an inspired week.